Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 57. Svecha avatara charitai achincha nija mayaya karishyati. My dear Dhruva, besides worshipping the deity and chanting the mantra 3 times a day, you should meditate upon the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His different incarnations as exhibited by His supreme will and personal potencies. Purport. Devotional service comprises 9 prescribed practices: hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, serving, offering everything to the deity, etc. Here Dhruva Maharaj is advised not only to meditate on the form of the Lord, but to think of His transcendental pastimes in His different incarnations. Mayavadi philosophers take the incarnation of the Lord to be in the same category as the ordinary living entity. This is a great mistake. The incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not forced to act by the material laws of nature. The word svecha is used here to indicate that He appears out of His supreme will. The conditioned soul is forced to accept a particular type of body according to his karma given by the laws of material nature under the direction of the Supreme Lord. But when the Lord appears, He is not forced by the dictation of material nature. He appears as He likes by His own internal potency. That is the difference. The conditioned soul accepts a particular type of body, such as the body of a hog, by his work and by the superior authority of material nature. But when Lord Krishna appears in the incarnation of a boar, He is not the same kind of hog as an ordinary animal. Krishna appears as Varaha avatar in an expansive feature which cannot be compared to an ordinary hog's. His appearance and disappearance are inconceivable to us. In the Bhagavad Gita it is clearly said that He appears by His own internal potency for the protection of the devotees and the annihilation of the non-devotees. A devotee should always consider that Krishna does not appear as an ordinary human being or ordinary beast. His appearance as Varaha Murti, or a horse or tortoise, is an exhibition of His internal potency. In the Brahma Samhita it is said, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavata Bis. One should not mistake the appearance of the Lord as a human being or beast to be the same as the birth of an ordinary conditioned soul who is forced to appear by the laws of nature, whether as an animal, as a human being, or as a demigod. This kind of thinking is offensive. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has condemned the Mayavadis as offensive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of their thinking that the Lord and the conditioned living entities are one and the same. Narada advises Dhruva to meditate on the pastimes of the Lord, which is as good as the meditation of concentrating one's mind on the form of the Lord. As meditation on the form of the Lord is valuable, so is chanting of different names of the Lord, such as Hari, Govinda, and Narayana. But in this age we are especially advised to chant the Hare Krishna mantra as enunciated in the Shastra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Svachavatara charitaya achinchani jamaya karishyat chittumashlokas tadjaya judayangamam. My dear Dhruva, besides worshipping the deity and chanting the mantra 3 times a day, you should meditate upon the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His different incarnations as exhibited by the supreme will and personal potencies. So once again we find the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and us, the living entities, who are His parts and parcels. We are forced to take our birth according to the order of higher authority. Karmana, Daiva Natrena. Daiva refers to the higher authority. Who that higher authority is, or what it is variegated in this particular sense of karma. But we are ruled by higher authority. And ultimately, we are ruled by Krishna. Karmana daiva netrena janto deho papataye. And thus, we are forced to change our bodies according to our activities. The higher authorities, there are so many of them. For instance, higher than us. We are talking now not higher authorities of this planet, because these authorities cannot force you to change your body. They cannot force you to take on a new body of their choice. So that kind of higher authority, meaning the mundane politicians or mundane leaders or whatever, we don't consider them in this particular discussion. We are talking about actual authorities, ones who have control over which body you're going to take. So there are demigods who are the representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who are also working within the material nature. The material nature is very vast, and all of the material elements, Bhumi, Apo, Anula, Vayu, Kam, Mana, Buddhi, Ahankara, these 8 material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, comprise the material energy which is manifested, which we utilize. Beyond that manifested material energy, there are the modes of material nature which cause the entire material creation to act, to change, to do things, to create, to go here or there. They inspire all of the living entities in different ways. The living entities are pushed by this energy. Bhungte prakriti stohi purusha prakriti jan guna. They are pushed. Living entity is pushed by the material energy, which causes him to move in this direction or that direction, according to his karma, according to the way in which he's associating with the material energy. He creates karma. According to the karma, he creates future actions and reactions. So the living entity accepts different bodies according to the direction of the modes of material nature as it is manifested through the activities of the demigods. And who is keeping track of all of this intricate karma? Krishna. Not directly, but indirectly as the Supersoul. The Supersoul directly takes charge of all of our karma, keeping track of our karma, who sits within our heart. Krishna describes the Supersoul as Avyaktamurti, the localized form, non-manifested form. In other words, he's Krishna who's appearing everywhere, within every heart and within every atom. So Krishna says, and yet I stand outside of this material universe. Krishna himself is not part of this material universe, although it is simply nothing but his energy. He, in his original form, as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, stands far away from that energy in the spiritual sky. So Krishna personally stays in Goloka, his planet, enjoying with his devotees. Yet his energies are manifesting here in this material world, and thus the whole material creation is going on. And part of the functioning of the material world is the maintenance function. Stiti. Stiti, the word comes from sthana, which comes from the concept of staying, situating, maintaining. The material universe is maintained by Krishna. It cannot be maintained by anyone else. Only the Supreme Personality of Godhead can maintain the whole creation, because it's his energy. Only he can maintain his energy. Therefore, he accepts the role as the maintainer within this material world. Lord Vishnu is one of his incarnations and expansions. And Lord Vishnu takes the role as the maintainer. He incarnates amongst the demigods as Lord Vishnu. He is not a demigod. No more than when he incarnates amongst the human beings, he becomes a human being. But Krishna appears within all the different species of life for the sake of the living entities in those species. For the sake of the demigods, he appears as Lord Vishnu. For the sake of the human beings, he appears as Lord Krishna or Lord Ramachandra. There are other demigods, other incarnations as well amongst the other species, which are doing enormous benefit to all the living entities. Every one of Krishna's incarnations benefits everybody. So, Krishna, he stands beyond this material creation, yet he enters within it for the assistance of this existence. He assists in this material world the activities of the living entities. As Super Soul, he causes the living entities to move from one species of life to the next species of life. He is the direct cause of the movement. He tells the living entity, you go there. That does not mean that he is the cause of the particular body you will attain. But he is the one who causes the movement to take place. The time of departure of the living entity from the body and the place of arrival of the living entity in a new body is determined by the living entity's previous actions. That is karma. But the actual departure and arrival is handled by the Super Soul. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayam sarva bhutani and charudani maya. The living entity is told to go out of this body to a particular new body by the Super Soul. According to time, the Super Soul decides, now it is time for you to move. Your karma is over. It is finished. In this body, it's time to take up your karma in a new body. Now move and go out that way. We've described often how there are so many different nerves in the body. And these nerves, they carry the consciousness. And the living entity departs through one of these particular vessels. One hole he departs from by a certain pathway and goes to his next body from that path. So the living entity is the determiner of his body by his actions. But the one who specifically places him in his new body is the Supreme. So, the living entity is not, for instance, deciding, now I'm going to take the body of a dog. Or now I'm going to take the body of a demigod. He doesn't decide like that. He simply acts within the different modes of material nature. And according to the way he acts, he attains a body. Ordvam gachanti satvasta, majje tishtasi rajasa, jaganya gunavrittista, adho gachanti tamaso. If he's acting in the mode of goodness, in a very proper fashion in the mode of goodness, which is characterized by knowledge, characterized by piety, then he can elevate himself from the earthly platform to the platform on the same platform as the demigods. If you work within the mode of goodness, you can go to higher planets within this universe. That does not mean you leave this universe. You are still in the material world, captured by the material nature. But one goes to higher planets in this material universe and enjoys there for some period of time a life which is characterized by much more happiness than we find here in this particular earthly planet. At least there, it's always nice weather. So, Ordvam gachanti sattvasta mojje tishtati rajasa. And if one dies in the mode of passion, which is the most common form of death, he stays on the platform of the human being. Mojje. He remains on this platform, human form. He can take another human birth. But which particular human birth is not to be understood. You may, of course it is understood by the Supersoul, and it may be understood later on when you look back, but it is not to be understood beforehand by the living entity. He may take a very good body on this earth, or he may take a very bad body on this earth. This is up to his action, up to his karma. And agadho gachanti tamasa jaganya gunavrittista, those who are acting in a very, very nasty fashion, mode of ignorance, practically acting like animals, they fall back into the lower species of life, fall down, falling down, off of the human platform. Sometimes people complain, especially here in Sweden, I don't know where they got it from, but the most complaints have come from this country. They say, how is it when, if you become a human being, you never fall backwards again? You advance to that point, you never fall backwards again. They always complain like that. And we ask them, well, why? They say, because your consciousness is developed, therefore it cannot undevelop. And we say, well, where did you hear that from? Is this part of any literature? You can quote it anywhere? Nobody ever has a quote. It's just simply just some idea. And then we always ask, well, if you're acting like an animal, do you consider that your consciousness has advanced? Has developed? Of course not. If in your human form of life you act like an animal, then you can become one. It is not that you must always move forward according to your actions, so you will attain a certain form. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam chijanti ante kulevaram. According to one's consciousness at the time of death, he will attain a particular form without fail. Without fail. You will get that particular form. So the consciousness is developing in this life, that's for sure. There is development, but it is not necessarily a progressive development. It may degress. You develop your consciousness in the human form, there's no doubt. But in which direction you develop it, that remains to be seen. The human form has freedom to choose which way it will develop as it likes. So one can develop very nicely and thus advance in his next lifetime. This is material. Even advancing, developing nicely, still material, because you'll take another material body. Or one can digress in this lifetime and attain a very low platform. That's possible. There's no rule that says it's not so. The rule is, as a matter of fact, that there's freedom to progress or degress. Most people in this age of Kali, especially at this particular portion of it, are very eager to degress, regress, to fall backwards. They want to fall backwards into the lower forms, lower species. So, such personalities, they get their choice. Those who want to progress, they get their choice. Those who want to surrender to Krishna, they get their choice. And they go to the spiritual world beyond this material arrangement. So these different possibilities of action, of movement, are there. And the living entity may make his choice and act accordingly. Because according to the way he acts in the material nature, he will get a particular result, because that's the way the material world is made. Cause and effect. If you create a particular kind of cause, you get a particular kind of effect. If you do things in one way, you'll get that kind of result. You're fixed. It's fixed. You cannot change it. And one certainly cannot be the master of his changes. It is not like at this point I can say, all right, I don't like this body anymore. I'm going to now take the body of demigod. Poof. Or here come some rogues and dacoits ready to give me trouble, so I'm going to change immediately into the form of a cat and slink away into the forest so they can't. Poof. Of course, maybe those who have a little mystic power, they can do like that. But they cannot change their own death. Even you may be a mystic yogi and may be able to decide when you're going to leave this world, but you can't decide not to leave this world. And once you've left this world, you go to the spiritual world, or Brahman. Even you go to Brahman, you can't decide to stay there all the time. You must fall down at one point. Even you fly to the heavenly planets, you can't decide to stay there all the time. When your karma is finished, you fall down again. Well, we can change our body, and run away. Or even you might change your body and put up a good fight. But still, you may be hurt or wounded or maybe killed or whatever. Krishna, first of all, if someone tries to attack him like some demon, Krishna enjoys it. Even if he's a small baby, even if he accepts the form of a small baby, and a big, huge demon comes, he doesn't have to make any big arrangement to change to protect himself. He simply smiles, accepts the big demon as mother. One demon, Putana, came to cause the death of baby Krishna by smearing poison on her breast so that when he would suck the milk, he would die. It was a materially reasonable plan. Anyone with material consciousness would think, well, this is highly probable that I will be able to perform this activity. She was one of those Rakshasas who could transform her form at will, like we were just discussing. So let's see what happens when she meets Krishna. So she transforms her form to a beautiful woman, although she's actually very, very big and ugly like anything. All Rakshasas are ugly, Rakshasis. Extremely ugly. So she transforms her form into a beautiful woman. And all of the inhabitants of Vrindavan thought this must be some demigoddess who's come to see baby Krishna. All right, so she comes and wants to nurse baby Krishna. So baby Krishna says, here's Putana witch. Very nice. Okay, you want to give me some milk? That's nice. Oh, you also want to give me some poison? That's all right. So he then proceeded to suck out the poison, the milk, and her life air, and finish her whole life right on the spot. And she was screaming and screaming, "Child, leave me!" "No, sorry. You have come to kill the Supreme, so just see what will happen to you. Now you will be killed." Krishna, he's not forced to take his birth, he's not forced to die, therefore you cannot kill him. So many demons approach Krishna. He did not have to make a big arrangement to change his form and do so many things to protect himself. No. Krishna, even Lord Ramachandra, there's a wonderful pastime of Lord Ramachandra. It is stated he was attacked by 13,000 Rakshasas in the middle of the forest. He sent Sita Devi off with Lakshman to go into the forest and hide in a cave so she would be safe. And he stood alone against 13,000 Rakshasas. The brothers of Ravana, two brothers of Ravana were there, Par and Dushana, and they were making huge arrangements of attacking Lord Ramachandra from this side and that side all at once, with huge noises and weapons coming from every direction. And he simply stood there very calmly and just kept shooting arrows. And after a short while, there was no one left but him. That is what happens when you face the Supreme Lord. Now someone may say, well, this sounds highly unlikely, that God would come here into this world. Then we ask, why is it highly unlikely? No one has yet ever answered that question. Why it is highly unlikely. Or if they start scratching their head, or they say something stupid. They may say, well, he doesn't, why should he? Why shouldn't he? If this material world is his creation, as everything is, why shouldn't he be interested in this part of it? And if you are his part and parcel, which you are, why shouldn't he be interested in you? Just see how interested we are in any little thing that comes from us. So attached to it, so interested to it. Just see how interested everybody is in their children. So attached. Why? Because they part and parcel. Of course, that's all bogus. But we think like that. So anyway, Krishna, we are actually his parts and parcels. We are actually his parts and parcels. Therefore, he is attached to us. Unfortunately, we are not attached to him. That's the problem. But because of his love for us, he does come into this material world and acts in various functions. As Vishnu, he maintains. As Super Soul, he's also maintaining. Everywhere, giving guidance within the heart of the living entity, giving remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness. He is the energy which holds together the stuff of existence within every atom. He is also giving the directions to all the demigods, who then control the entire material world. He is the source of the modes of material nature, which are allowing everything to work in their characteristic ways. He is everywhere throughout this creation in his unmanifested form, Krishna. So the Supreme Lord, he is very interested in making sure things go on properly. That is why he comes to this world. He also comes to please his devotees, to annihilate the demons, and to reestablish the principles of religion. In other words, he comes when he wants out of his mercy for our sake. And when he comes, it is not an austerity, because he comes and enjoys his pastime. He also enjoys killing demons. He also enjoys dancing with his devotees. He enjoys in this world, wherever he goes, because he is the supreme enjoyer. Wherever we go, we are not the enjoyer, neither the controller. But Krishna, wherever he goes, whenever he goes out of his own desire, in his own, under his own time schedule, as he likes. Krishna does what he wants, when he wants. Independent. He may be engaged completely in all of the activities of creation, maintenance, and annihilation through his agencies, or directly in the case of Lord Vishnu. But he is all the time independent in his actions. He will do what he wants, when he wants, as he likes. Because he is independent. He is not forced to come here. He is not forced to leave. He is not forced to change his body. He is not forced to do anything. In fact, he's the one who causes everything to occur. This material world is like a jail. If Krishna enters into the jail, it does not mean he's a part of the jail, or he's captured by the jail like the rest of us. When the warden or the person in charge of the prison visits the prison, that does not mean he's a prisoner. He is coming to see, are the bars shiny? Is the floor clean? Nobody killed each other the other day? Okay, it's all right. He comes and visits the jail, and then he leaves again. This is not what Krishna, he does like that. He is not a prisoner. the jail man in charge of the jail. He's not a prisoner. Krishna is not a prisoner. He simply comes and helps us. That's all. Then he goes as he likes, by his own energy. Atma Maya. He manifests as he likes, and he leaves when he likes. He is totally free and independent with free will. His free choice is unimpeded. We have a little teensy bit of free choice. Tiny, tiny, tiny. But Krishna has unlimited free will. He does whatever he likes. That is the nature of the Supreme. So we can see, obviously, that there is a vast difference between the living entity and the Supreme. However, the similarity is there in the sense that we are Krishna's parts and parcels. Therefore, we reflect a little bit of Krishna's energy. We also have a little bit of independence. We also have a little bit of knowledge. We also have a little bit of bliss. Of course, that little bit to us is an enormous amount. An ant is very small. A drop of water is also very small. But if you put the drop of water on the ant, the poor fellow's going to drown. Although it's very small from our point of view, it's insignificant, a drop of water. Who even pays attention to a drop of water? It takes a long time even to see a drop of water. So we might be thinking, this is so small, it has no value, it's insignificant. But if you're also so small, it becomes a huge ocean. For the ant, a little puddle of water in the middle of the floor is a big ocean. So for us, our share of knowledge, of bliss, although so small as compared to Krishna, is enormous compared to us. Therefore, we are completely satisfied, drowning in the ocean of transcendental bliss. So, in this way, we understand the difference of the Supreme Lord and the living entity. How the Supreme Lord, in his different incarnations and pastimes, manifests his supreme will and personal potencies as he likes. He manifests his supreme will, his personal potencies, and Hridayangamam. They attract the heart. They're very attractive. One who understands the nature of Krishna, meditates on Krishna's pastimes, his potencies, his incarnations, he will be able to very quickly realize the Supreme. Therefore Narada Muni is saying, besides chanting the mantras, besides worshipping the form of the Lord, you should also meditate on the pastimes of the Lord. You should think about how Krishna incarnates in this world, how Krishna appears, what he does, when he does, why he does, with who he does, with what he does, where he does. All of these points are very nice. The Bhagavatam gives exactly the answer to the how, why, when, where, who, which. He gives all these answers. Krishna performs his pastimes here and there and there. Starts off in Gokula Vrindavan, then he moves to Mathura, then he goes to Dwarka. He performs his pastimes here and here and here. And when, exactly so long ago, it's actually even astrologically it can be ascertained. They made this calculation. Right now it must be 5,040 something years ago that battle of Kurukshetra took place. So Krishna's appearance was roughly 125 years before that. So about 5,129 or something like that years ago, 69, 64 or something. Years ago, Krishna appeared on this planet in Vrindavan. Then, after roughly 8-9 years, 10 years, moved off to Mathura. Then stayed there for a short time, then moved off to Dwarka. We know where he was, how he was, when he was, what he did. In Vrindavan he did like this and this and this. In Dwarka he did like this and this and this. And with who? Even the names of his different devotees. All these things are known. It is not a mystery. If you want to have complete knowledge of the Supreme, one must know the activities of the Supreme. Not that one says, oh, God is the big everything. Therefore, who can possibly be attracted to this? And then it becomes like religion, a big amorphous faith, where you just believe. I believe. Believe what? I believe in God. Well, who's He? He's everywhere. He's everything. He's the greatest. He's somewhere. But these kind of beliefs, they don't really pin down any knowledge. It's amorphous. There's no particular form, no particular circumstance, no detail. Just all this way, that way. You can think something, I can think something else. Just be good. All right, so you be good, that's all right. You may go to the heavenly planets, maybe, if you're lucky. But that doesn't get one realization of the Supreme. That doesn't get one connected with the Supreme Absolute Truth. How do you connect with an amorphous something somewhere? Something which has no particular form, no particular place. How do you connect? The only way that one thinks of connecting is, well, then he has to get rid of his form and merge. Then somehow connection is there. But merging does not mean connecting. Actually, even the meaning of the word merge is very unclear. Merge actually means one's present existence dissolves totally. And it no longer exists in this form at all. It is an impossibility to think of. How do you dissolve the spiritual energy? The Mayavadis have the biggest problem with this concept of the Vedic literatures, that the soul is indivisible. Cannot be cut, cannot be anything. Indivisible, cannot be divided. That is very clearly stated throughout all of the Upanishads about the soul's indivisibility, individability. It is an impossibility to keep going. It is an impossibility to divide. Yet, if they say merge, merge means all divided into such infinitesimal portions that cease to exist. Now, according to the Shastra, that's impossible. According to logic and reason, that's also impossible. Just mathematically, that is impossible. Every mathematician knows that there's no such thing as dividing a something into a nothingness by making it so small. For instance, points on a line. They can become smaller, 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 but you never reach the end of having the point have no dimension. It's like you take a point from here to here and you divide it in half, then take that, divide that in half, 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 take that, divide that in half. But it always goes on. There's always something to divide in half. Even though it's so small, there's always something to divide in half. At no point is it impossible to divide something in half, even though it's very small. You may have no conception of it, but it's still there. So how, by dividing the soul, do you get to the nothingness? Or the oneness? So it's a very confusing concept, merging. They don't really think about it very much. They just say it, merging. Then when you ask, how? They say, it's inconceivable. But if it's inconceivable, then how can we do it? They say, you just chant this, and then all of a sudden, just go home, and all of a sudden, somehow, mystically, it all becomes merged. So we ask, have you merged? If you've merged, what are you doing standing here and telling me? And if you haven't merged, then how do you know how to do it? And who told you? Well, he didn't merge either, otherwise he couldn't have told you. Interesting point. Being told to merge by someone who never merged himself. But actually, nobody ever merged, because you cannot merge. It's an impossibility. Because one is always existing. The soul is indivisible. And nowhere do we find in the Shastras that the soul expands to become the oneness. Anyway, just consider, if the soul is expanding, for instance, well, how much room is there in existence? Let's say I'm expanding to become the oneness. Well, let's say you also heard the same Mayavadi. So you also expand to become the oneness. So we bump into each other at one point. Here we are both expanding, so boom. Get out of my way, I'm becoming the one. No, I'm becoming the one. I'm excited. So, how do you expand? To what point do you expand? Where does it stop? Then one may say, no, it's not material, it overlaps. Well, then we have overlays. You expand on me, and I expand on you, and he expands on me, and everybody's expanding, and everybody's expanding to the oneness, so that it becomes thicker and bigger. So whatever it is, it becomes thicker. Of course, these are impossible concepts. We've reduced the expansion to 2 dimensions and then put them on top of each other. It's an impossibility. It's ridiculous to even talk about it. But in this way, the logical extension of these concepts is given. How do you merge? Do you expand and become the one? Or do you contract and become the nothing? At what point does a something become a nothing? What is the stage right next to becoming nothing? What is the final stage just before you become nothing? What is the next to final stage just before you become nothing? At what point do you become nothing? How does becoming nothing happen? What is the preliminary something that makes you nothing? Like in the cartoons where you open the thing and the spring comes out? Join. Nobody can think of this. How something becomes nothing? It's ridiculous. It's impossible. So it's not possible to become nothing by becoming very small if you're already something. Because where does it go? And even you chop it, it becomes something. You mush it, it becomes something. Or mush something. But you can't do these things to the soul. So the whole concept is ridiculous. You can't expand to become the one because everybody else is busy doing that too. And you don't expand them. You expand you. So you expand, they expand. So you're not them. Let's say you are them. Then if you are them, then why don't you expand them and we can all become one together? But the proof that it's not so is that I refuse to become one. So what do you say about that? If you're me and I'm you and we're all one together, then why don't you make me one? But I say, forget it. I'm not going to become one. I'm perfectly happy being a little something at Krishna's lotus feet. We're not interested in becoming one. So the proof that I'm not you and you're not me is that you can't make me one. In fact, you can't make me anything except annoyed with the stupid philosophy. So if you can't become nothing by becoming small, and you can't become one by expanding, then how do you become one? How does one merge? Since everyone here is expert at it. How does one merge? Kindly tell me.